Tall Tower Television, TV3, WLBT, Jackson. From Mississippi's #1 news team, this is a WLBT 6 p.m. report. Walter Sadler and Marcia Halford Pollock with news, Michael Rubenstein with sports, and Woody Asaf with the weather.
Good evening, everyone. A mid-morning fire destroyed 6 units of the Hickory Knoll apartment complex north of Jackson. 3 engine companies from the Jackson Fire Department were called in to assist the Ridgeland Fire Department to fight the blaze, which swept through the old Canton Road complex shortly after 10 this morning. Fire officials brought the blaze under control within 45 minutes. No one was injured, as all tenants in the gutted units had already gone to work.
The smoke was so thick and so black coming out, it just knocked me back. And by that time, the fire department from Ridgeland got here, and I gave the other keys to the other end of the apartment so that they could get those open. But they told me that it looked like someone had left grease on the stove, either in whichever of the middle apartments there would be C and D. They're not sure which one. And that's the way it started. And then the whole back was gutted, and then it started through the front and across the top.
Did everybody get out all right?
Yes, everyone was out, and tried to call everybody that I could at work. And the lines were all busy, but they finally got through and got everyone out.
There were earlier reports that the fire started from a skillet of grease in the kitchen, but fire officials have denounced those reports. Ridgeland Fire authorities say the blaze started in a room adjacent to the kitchen. The cause is still under investigation.
Meanwhile, convicted prostitutes could have their suspended jail sentences revoked as the city's tougher policy toward the crime goes into effect. The Jackson City Council today passed new legislation aimed at controlling prostitution in this city, as Gary Landry reports.
City Attorney Howard Ross says up to this time, there was no set procedure for bringing before the court the fact that a person had a prior conviction for prostitution. The new legislation will obligate the court administrator to bring to the attention of the municipal judge that there has been a prior conviction.
That prior conviction under this ordinance, as we have adopted, will result in a revocation of any prior suspension that may have been meted out to this defendant.
Ross says there isn't any one area of the city which the legislation is specifically aimed at, but he admitted the Farish Street area is an obvious one.
To the Chief of Police, I think the Farish Street area has been rather notorious over the years, and this City Council has been committed to trying to do something about that. I tried to do something about it 3 years ago when I was one of the municipal judges. We met with some success, but we're going to tighten up a little bit more, because just as fast as you stop it, apparently other people come in and take up this calling, if you will, and we're just going to try to put a stop to it.
The new legislation goes into effect December 18th. Gary Landry, WLBT News.
President-elect Ronald Reagan is gathering his entourage, and included are some Mississippians. Congressman Trent Lott says a Loosedale native has become the second Mississippian to be named to Reagan's transition team. Neil Peden, a former member of Lott's staff in Washington, will serve as comptroller for the group. She has worked for Reagan since 1975. GOP officials announced yesterday 30-year-old Wilbur Collum, a black Columbus attorney, was named to the transition team also. Lott and other Republican congressional leaders met with Reagan today. It was Reagan's first meeting with congressmen since his election victory. Lott says discussions focused on Reagan's wish to work with Congress to turn the federal government around.
The presidential election was 2 weeks ago today, and the final official results for Mississippi are still unavailable. Bert Case with more.
This is where the final official tabulation is being made in the Heber-Ladner building. These men are Dexter Barr, former chairman of the State Tax Commission and a veteran of more than 30 years in state government, and Bill Neal, a former state auditor who has served on several occasions as a master for federal courts on Mississippi reapportionment cases. They were hired by Secretary of State Ed Pittman to ready the results for official certification. So far, they've certified results from only 44 of the 82 counties. We asked Pittman today what changes in election laws would be necessary to get official results sooner than 2 weeks after the election.
Well, there are two things that we should do so far as the presidential election is concerned. One, we should vote directly on the presidential candidate and eliminate the 7 elector vote. And then secondly, we should require in every county a voting machine. The legislature could buy them and lease them, if you would, to the counties that do not now have them. But we ought to have a voting device and a voting machine so that we can tabulate instantaneously the results of the votes of the public of this state.
Pittman says the latest total available shows over 886,000 Mississippians voted in the presidential election, and the total may go as high as 890,000. That's an all-time record. The previous record was 780,000 in the 1972 general election. This is Bert Case, WLBT News.
In other matters, almost 3 weeks after a tragic house fire in Bentonia, Mississippi claimed 2 lives, a 3-year-old baby girl is still unaccounted for. Authorities who have sifted through the burned ruins and the area near the home say they have found nothing, no trace. The child is officially listed as missing.
Authorities have reason to believe the child perished in the fire, but there is no evidence to confirm that. Found in the rubble was the body of 14-month-old Maurice Jones and his grandmother, Minnie Lee McGowan. Coroner Vernon Stanley says no remains for the little girl were found in the ashes.
After the firemen had knocked the fire down enough to get in, they found 2 bodies of child that we determined was the 14-month-old baby and the grandmother. We were not able to find any evidence of the 3rd person, which would be a 3-year-old child, approximately 40 to 45 pounds.
The little girl's mother was not at home at the time of the fire, having gone shopping. She says it would be a relief knowing one way or the other about her daughter.
It would if I really knew. But the thing about it, I just don't, I just don't know.
Are you still hopeful?
I'm still hoping something could come up. But like I say, in the meantime, I hope that some way she could be found, whether she, whether she dead or alive or what, If I could find out, I'd be all right.
The girl's disappearance is shrouded in mystery. No relatives have her. The only other explanation is when the fire scene was disturbed, the skeletal remains disintegrated. But then officials say the temperature should not have been sufficient to have burned all trace of the body.
As many as 35 people have searched the area around the wooded area around the house for the girl without finding a trace. Meanwhile, the house where the victims burned was, according to the state fire marshal, very substandard, typical of the kind of house that contributes to Mississippi's high death toll from fires. Tomorrow, a look at other substandard houses in that area, and we will hear the mayor of Bentonia say there is no program to deal with that problem.
Deadly force has become a matter of concern for Jackson's police and legal departments. City attorneys are currently reviewing a general order prepared by the police department involving the use of deadly force by officers. The long-standing regulation has been rewritten to provide lawmen clarification concerning the use of firearms when in pursuit of those who have broken the law. Here's more on that story.
Target practice on the firing range. Under state law, police officers can shoot at a fleeing felon, but the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled they cannot. As a result of the legal inconsistency, the Jackson Police Department has essentially rewritten a general order pertaining to the use of deadly force to protect the suspect, the officer, and the public. The regulation will give police clarification on what is expected of them while in pursuit of a felony suspect. Just recently, a grand jury failed to indict Jackson policeman Gary King on murder charges of an armed woman. Police Chief Ray Pope said there has been a fine line in determining when it is necessary to open fire and stay within the boundaries of the old deadly force regulation.
The police officer got on a fine line, ma'am, the day that he made the mistake of swearing that he would attempt to uphold the laws of this state and ordinances of this city, and he's been on a fine line ever since and will be until and possibly after the day that he retires. The citizens of this city employ us to go out and enforce the law, and you be real sure that you enforce the law very, very strictly, except on me and mine. And so where I get involved, or where my people, or where my family gets involved, you are wrong if you try to do anything about it. That's what we face. We still face it under a new order.
City Attorney Howard Ross, who must review the revamped deadly force general order, said the regulation calls for restrictions and restraint on the part of police officers, in some cases, when it comes to the use of their firearms.
Of course, to try to draw a general rule here that will apply to all cases is very, very difficult, but it will be restrictive in the sense of shooting someone who is running from you.
The deadly force general order is now in its final form and on the city's legal desk for approval, providing there are no legal ramifications involved. Chief Pope said he expects to adopt the regulation and put it into effect soon as standard operating procedure for all police officers.
The State College Board will discuss an unusual problem faced by Mississippi State University in its two-day meeting starting tomorrow. MSU is having a hard time finding some $74,000 to detoxify a 40-acre campus area contaminated by a rare disease spread from blackbird droppings. MSU officials say as a last resort, they may have to come up with the funds despite a tight budget next year. A preliminary hearing is set for December 18th for 3 Lowndes County men arrested in a raid last weekend in which 35 pounds of marijuana was confiscated. Officials say 26-year-old Ernest Knowles, 23-year-old Danny Bowen, and 32-year-old William Bowen are free on bond. The 3 were charged with possession of marijuana, and the elder Bowen is charged with intent to sell. Officials say firearms were also seized in that raid. Cotton closed mixed today on the New York Cotton Exchange. December was down $1.35 a bale, and March was down 5 cents. On the Board of Trade, soybeans closed up. November was up 17.25 cents a bushel. November 1981 was up 12.75 cents. December cattle prices were down 58 points. Prices were higher on the New York Stock Exchange. The Dow gained over 11.5 points, putting the Dow Jones average at 997.94. Michael Rubenstein has all the developments in sports coming up. We hope.
Despite scoring the most points on an LSU team in 66 years, Mississippi State was bumped up just 1 notch in this week's UPI coaches poll. The Sun Bowl-bound Dogs barely edged out Rose Bowl-bound Washington for 16th by just a single point. Texas, UCLA, and Florida round out the bottom 5. The nation's only unbeaten teams, Georgia and Notre Dame, hold 1 and 2, much to the joy of Sugar Bowl organizers. Nebraska, Florida State, Ohio State 3, 4, and 5. Pitt, Penn State, and Cotton Bowl entrant Baylor in 6th, 7th, and 8th. Possible Sun Bowl entrant Oklahoma 9th, with Alabama falling to 10th. The Dome isn't such a home sweet home for Seattle. The Seahawks ran their 1980 season to a perfect 0-6 mark in the Kingdome last night, losing to red-hot Oakland 19-17.
Seattle broke open a scoreless game late in the first half on a fake field goal. Holder Jim Zorn pulled up and passed to kicker Efren Herrera. Herrera went out of bounds at the Oakland goal line. Lawrence McCutcheon plunged over, and the Seahawks led 7-0 at halftime. Seattle took a 14-0 lead early in the third quarter on Zorn's 8-yard touchdown pass to Dan Dornick. The Raiders made it interesting when Arthur Whittington tried a halfback option. His receivers were covered, and he reversed his field for a 10-yard touchdown to make it 14-7. The game turned Oakland's way in the fourth quarter. Seattle was up 17-7 when Ted Hendricks blocked Herman Weaver's punt. The ball skipped through the end zone for a safety, and it was 17-12. Jim Plunkett brought the Raiders closer when he hit Derek Ramsey on this 58-yard pass to the Seattle 1, setting up Mark Van Egen's touchdown to cut the Seattle lead to 17-16. Seattle was driving again when Hendricks got a hand on Zorn's pass. Lester Hayes intercepted, setting up Oakland's final drive. Plunkett brought the Raiders closer on this 18-yard pass to Ramsey to the Seattle 17. A minute and 49 seconds remained. Then, with a minute to go, Chris Barr kicked a 28-yard field goal, giving the Raiders a 19-17 win over the Seahawks, who have lost all 6 home games this year. Jeff Davis, NBC News.
SMU football coach Ron Meyer today denied reports he had been interviewed for the head coaching and AD jobs at Memphis State. Meyer did admit he had called MSU President Thomas Carpenter, but only as a courtesy gesture. He asked me if I would be interested in the football coaching job, and I said no, said Meyer. In no way was the AD job discussed. Current MSU coach Richard Williamson was told last week he would not be retained, and AD Billy Murphy is rumored on the way out. Yankees owner George Steinbrenner was also denying a New York Post story that he had fired manager Dick Hauser. The Post said that general manager Gene Michael would replace Hauser. Today's story was completely without fact or basis, said Steinbrenner. ACC fans relying more on pomp than circumstance will certainly differ with you, but the most competitive basketball league in the country is the Big Ten. Indiana, Ohio State, Iowa, possibly Minnesota figured a challenge at the top this fall, but Illinois feels its chances have radically improved. Obvious problems will move on from there, and hopefully we'll be lucky and get back to it. Johnny Bench has changed his mind, saying he will stay in Cincinnati and try to find a position other than catcher. Cincinnati has become too much a part of me for me to ask to be traded, said Bench at a news conference today. Bench expressed trade hopes just yesterday. The Reds have agreed to Bench's request that he catch no more than twice a week, but refused to guarantee him a starting spot at any other position. This and that from here and there in today's sports world. The stumbling Chicago Bears announced that head coach Neil Armstrong would return next season. Northwestern football coach Rick Venturi says he doesn't expect to be back next year. Why should he? The Wildcats have lost 20 straight. And former longtime American League umpire Nestor Shylock offered this quote today, a quote that would make any politician proud. Said Shylock, "I wasn't the best umpire in baseball, but there was none better." Woody will have weather in just a moment.
Well, if you think it got cold last night, wait till tonight. Going to be near freezing. Freeze warning out for the entire state with the exception of a little bit southeast Mississippi. And it's going to be even colder tomorrow night. They're predicting snow tonight as far down as Arkansas and Tennessee. We have not had any reports of snow or any predicted for our area. This big high pressure ridge you can see in Texas, Kansas, moving through our area, and as it moves the cloudiness out, the cold weather is moving in. It started getting colder today. Now here's the front that came by area last night, brought the rain and the colder weather. It's just about to wash out, and by this time tomorrow it will. Taking the winter storm that it had along this low on out into the Atlantic. The only other front on the map from Minnesota down into Nebraska, it's going to move east, but no closer to our area. So we'll be controlled by that big high pressure ridge. The cloudiness moves out, cold weather begins to move in, and we'll get colder. As I said, they got freeze warning out tonight, and incidentally that extends into Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, all except southeast Mississippi tonight. Now this afternoon they had 12 inches of snow up in Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, heavy snow and snow warnings, or let's call it snow storms out tonight, up in the New England states, New York, Pennsylvania, all the way through the Ohio Valley. This afternoon, Miami, Florida had an 87. They had 8 degrees in a couple of spots in Wyoming. Now, let's see what the weatherman says for the whole state. Freeze warning tonight all except southeast Mississippi. It'll be fair tomorrow through Thursday, and then cold again tomorrow night. 20s north, near 30 central, 30s south and southeast. High tomorrow will be in the 50s. Our river stages now, let's take a look. They begin in the fall. Pearl at 5 o'clock, 9-3, down 1/10. Vicksburg is steady. Greenville is up 2/10. Greenwood up 1/10. Natchez up 2/10. Yazoo up 7/10, and New Orleans down a foot. All right, looking at our chart, we had a 67 yesterday, 44 today. 40 last night, about 39 right now, a trace of precipitation. Humidity is about 45%. The barometer is rising 30-30. Low 50s tonight, or tomorrow, near 30 tonight, but it'll be in the mid-50s Thursday and the mid-20s tomorrow night. No precipitation. Northerly winds about 10. They'll remain northerly up to about 10. If we get to near 30 tonight and the wind's 5 to 10, that's going to put the chill factor about 20 degrees tonight in Jackson. The sun set tonight at 4:59, will rise in the morning 6:34, set tomorrow 4:59. Look at radar 3, nothing showing at all. Hadn't been anything around our area. Just cold weather. And from all indications, looking at the long-range forecast, this might extend a little warmer in the daytime, but it might extend right through the weekend. So if you got out your long handles last night, you're going to need them tonight and tomorrow night. All right, the weatherman says simply, freeze warning tonight. It'll be fair tomorrow through Thursday. Walter?
Well, thank you, Woody. And of course, after that hot weather we had in the last few months, a lot of people are extremely happy to see this cool weather move in. I don't know whether...
I don't know about Michael. He's been saying no.
I hate cold weather. No, we had a call today and says wind's going to get hot again.
Really?
I've been inclined to agree with that.
I think the key issue is how are all these people in central Mississippi going to eat and enjoy their supper if not knowing why Illinois basketball is going to be better?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's our report for tonight. Thank you for joining us. The next scheduled local news at 10 p.m. report.
Tonight on TV3 at 7 on NBC